Hi, it's Michael and David here, presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for the current challenges and also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week with David Gregory, CEO of the Small Business Mentoring Service, we'll interview a different small business expert or a fellow business owner and operator. And they're going to share their best tips and insights for you, the listener. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. Thanks also to our supporters, Kerr Capital and the Small Business Mentoring Service. Outsourcing remains a very significant opportunity for small business owners to help them improve the performance of their business and to make it more efficient. It's become a lot more accessible over recent years with a focus on outsourcing to other countries, but increasingly to outsource within Australia. And today's guest is Jo Palmer. She founded, amongst other things, she founded Pointer Remote Roles, which looks at matching small businesses with employees. She's going to talk a lot more about it in today's discussion.
I think that's a really interesting topic, Michael, because when I look at the average small business, they go into business and they believe that they have to be everything from the managing director to the person who stacks the shelves. Now, one of the great things that we always encourage small businesses to do is to look at their skill sets, work within those skill sets, but also look at the things that you can't do or don't have a knowledge base of and get somebody who does. And outsourcing is absolutely the way that can happen.
So let's have a chat now with Jo. Would you like to just give the owners a little bit of your personal background with Pointer, but also with your other interests to set up the conversation?
Sure. Well, I started Pointer about 3.5 years ago after I was at a barbecue and sort of was looking around and realised that I had all these very clever girlfriends who had married farmers and were not putting their skills and experiences that they had gained over their careers before moving to farms to use. They were either working in jobs that were out of their industry or qualification areas, or they were not working as much as they wanted to, or some of them weren't working at all. And I just was like, this is ridiculous that we as a society have invested a fair bit of money and resources into educating and upskilling these people, and we just weren't leveraging them, and they weren't participating in the workforce as much as they wanted to, and that I thought they should have been. And so 3.5 years on, we have a sort of array of services that we do in the remote work space. So we have a job matching service that businesses can advertise jobs that can be done remotely from anywhere in Australia, as well as we do consulting in with businesses who are working in this remote way for the first time or wanting to leverage remote work for growth in their business because of the a lot of fiscal and social benefits that come from having a distributed team. And we do a lot of community-based work with supporting communities to really use and leverage remote work in an attraction and retention of population piece, as being able to build resilience around different climatic conditions that we seem to cop the brunt of a lot of in rural communities, and really working with businesses and individuals as well as local government and business chambers and those other stakeholders in town to really support them to really leverage remote work for their whole community's benefit.
Yeah, that's a great overview of what you do, and you clearly decided something had to be done, and you went ahead and did it. But you've been involved in some other entrepreneurial pursuits. Do you want to just quickly you talk about those before we...
It's become a bit of a bone of contention in my household that my husband said I'm not allowed to start any more businesses for another 5 years. So
well, you can outsource everything anyway, so you don't need to work in it.
Well, so Point is the third company that I've started. I'm actually a teacher by trade, a primary trained special needs and learning support teacher. So I had a learning centre where we did tutoring and school holiday programs that we ran in 3 small rural communities across southern New South Wales. And then I also had a sponsorship and event management company in the ag space, which my business partner bought me out of, and I sold the first business to one of my staff. And so we're all hands on deck with Pointer these days. And so I think that, like many in your audience, I'm exhibit A of that you don't have to be metro-based to start businesses that can have massive impact in local communities, but also can be nationally or internationally run. So Pointer's we're a national company. We've got job seekers and communities and businesses from every state and territory in Australia, and we've actually got a number of candidates on the books looking for work that are Australians for tax purposes but live all around the globe.
I think this is a wonderful example of not letting the brain's trust disappear. That when people move on from existing work or relocate to regional areas, the skills that they take with them are often quite extraordinary. And the opportunity for small businesses to outsource and make use of those resources is a fantastic one. For me personally, I look at the many thousands of businesses that we've worked with, and one of the fundamental challenges that small business face is that they believe that they've got to take on every possible role rather than apply the expertise of real experts in some of the areas that they haven't got strengths in. So is that some of the sorts of things that your organisation assists businesses in being able to access?
For sure. Look, I completely sympathise, and your businesses are often your other babies that you feel like you still need to and want to have your hands and eyes on all parts of the business. But there is obviously you can only do that for a certain amount of time or to a certain business size before you start doing a pretty miserable job at all the jobs rather than actually doing the stuff that you're best at. That's where I find that we have just the most success working with small business. And like when I started the business, I had my eyes on big corporate and was like, okay, you guys need to be hiring all this talent that lives in the region. And what we've found over the last few years is that where we've had the most uptake has been with regional and rural-based business, small to medium-sized businesses, because they are exactly how you've just described, that they may have just a few staff through to a couple of hundred staff, but the business owner or manager is still trying to do too much, and they previously have been restricted to the skills and talent that were available in their local area, or if they were able to justify paying a relocation fee to try and get someone to move to that town. Sometimes that was successful, but a lot of the people that we've spoke to that went down that sort of route have found that they could keep people there for a while, but if the community wasn't conducive to how that person lived and worked and those sorts of things, it was really quite tricky to hold on to people that way. So I think remote work has just really been a game changer for those rural businesses because you can access the skills that you need that are not available in your town. And that skill or talent may be living in a town 200 k's away, or they could be in another state, or they could be metro-based. So our candidates, we sort of say they fit into probably 4 sort of categories. So where we've got physically remote people that are possibly on a cattle station in central Queensland, through to people living in rural communities or regional cities. But then we also have job seekers that are metro-based, and they sort of fall into 2 categories, which are those that would love to leave the city and tree change or sea change, but they think there's no jobs in the country, so they don't want to leave until they have a remote job that they can take with them. Or we've got metro-based people that just don't want to sit in traffic. They would rather work remotely from home. And so what we've found now is the businesses, and none of this is new, I shouldn't say found now, but businesses have got access to these skills, and you don't have to fall into that trap of thinking like, oh, okay, I've got the budget for one FTE employee and I need to find this unicorn that will be able to do all of these things. That if you've got the budget to pay one full-time staff, you might actually employ 3 people that work either remotely or part-time in your business that are actually specialists in the areas where you need them. And I think that that's just the biggest opportunity, because it might not be forever. You don't then have to feel like you've got to employ someone permanently, or you can do things on contract basis to get the business up to scratch in an area, and then you can move your focus to somewhere else. And that's where we've just seen the biggest uptake for rural businesses, and where they're really being able to see growth off the back of that.
That's excellent. And by the way, we're talking to Jo Palmer from Pointer Remote Roles. Jo, we've had a number of interviews over the last little while with experts for small businesses. A common theme coming through is that owners can't do everything. So for owners listening in right now who are feeling like, they are everything in the business, what are the sort of, for outsourcing generally, what would you advise owners to do and what to think about to prepare themselves to outsource and to make it effective?
Well, a couple of things there. We do a really cool activity with businesses that come to us that are like, oh gosh, I'm drowning, like help me, of this concept, especially for people that are sole business owners and might have just a few staff or no staff at all and are looking to make that first hire or engagement, is to really look at that to-do list. Everyone has one. I am the queen of lists. And what I found was my list was completely overwhelming and daunting and gave me night terrors. And so I just did a very easy activity of literally imagining if I was a big company, I would have this C-suite of executives working for me. So I would have the CEO, I would have a chief marketing officer, I would have the chief technology officer, or I would have that C-suite of things. And so what I did was actually break up my to-do list into, if I had all of these people working for me, who would be doing these things, and put them
like
into
effectively like business departments or business units.
100%. Yeah. 100%. Yep. So this department would do the BAS. This department would do the social media and marketing plan. This department would do all the copywriting. This department would be doing strategic partnerships, and breaking up all of those things that I was doing. And I can say this with hand on heart because I literally did this process myself, and then I used this to actually make my first full-time hire. But then you can then look at that list and say, okay, generally the longest list is the longest list because you're either horrible at the tasks that sit in that list, or you hate them, or a combination of both of them, and you only ever get to those things on there when there's a due date, and if there's no due date or anyone breathing down your neck externally, then you just don't do them. So generally that's a really good place to make your first hire.
Yeah, hearing you.
As a result of the impacts of COVID and the fact that more and more people are also working from home, or they're isolated from the employment market, there would be more opportunities that have come out of this, or how has your business been impacted, and have you seen more businesses seeking this sort of opportunity as a result?
Look, our business personally copped it pretty hard early on, as far as like a lot of our revenue comes from businesses growing and hiring people, and so many people were panicking on how to hold on to the people that they already had on the books, let alone growing a team in very uncertain times. So that was quite challenging, and especially because we do a lot of our community-based stuff as workshops and forums and boots on the ground in rural communities all across Australia. So obviously travel bans and everyone being at home, we're still feeling it a fair bit in that part of the business, as well as far as just even group sizes and border closures and those sorts of things has been challenging But I am a big picture thinker, and I know that this has been extremely challenging for so many businesses and individuals and families and communities. But I just see moving forward and out the other side of this that the opportunities for small business, particularly regionally based small businesses, is just so enormous. Like, this has just proved all of the things, like I've been saying to people, I feel like I've been shouting into a void for years about this, and then all of a sudden when the whole world was forced to do it, they're like, oh, actually, like, no, that what you've been banging on about for years actually works. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
Did you get it on tape?
I feel like
you want to replay that, yeah.
But I think moving forward, that what this has proven hands down is that you can run a global business from anywhere. And I think that it has also proved that you can access skills and use them really effectively if you have the systems and processes in place to actually manage your company. With a hybrid style team, you might still have your bricks and mortar store or office, and you have some people working remotely, or even just using, now that you've been able to, your staff have had experience working from home, how that you can use this remote experience as a way to retain staff. Like, if your staff have proved to you that they can work effectively, that they're productive, and they've managed to do that not only when they've got their kids at home and their spouse at home and there's a global pandemic and crisis going around like the entire world, if they can still, like, so many statistics have said that people have still found themselves to be productive. Like, imagine what that looks like when you do that without those pressures. Like, a lot of people are now starting to see that. And I think that if you can then start offering that flexibility, or, like I said, that hybrid model where people might come into the office a few days a week, some days a week from home, that you then hold on to your staff for longer. You're not spending money with the likes of me to be replacing staff, because you're holding on to them, because people are actually that, I don't like the concept of work-life balance, but that work-life blend is actually, it's a real thing and can be a reality. So that's where I see just huge opportunities out the other side of COVID-19.
Yeah, it's certainly been the case that there's some, surprising and learnings coming from it, and some of them are really, really, really good, really, really strong. So the outlook for regional Australia, you're very buoyant about. Could you give some examples of small business owners that you've dealt with and what they've outsourced and what a difference it's made to their business? Just simple examples to really bring home to the listeners that they really, it's really time to start offloading some of those things that are holding them back.
Well, I think what a lot of businesses that we deal with have found really great about what we're doing and with our platform is because we're not industry specific, they can actually come back to us. So once they've got all those systems and processes in place for one person, that they can then scale, because they're like, okay, well, we know how to do this. We've got our internal communications, we've got our systems and processes, we've got our data security and everything set up, and it's all good to go. So we had an accounting firm. So an accounting firm who's advertised 5 jobs with us. So one was for a chartered accountant, but they came back and hired an HR manager, a social media and marketing manager, an executive assistant, and
variously in between full-time and part-time roles.
Yep.
So you could break down employees or employer requirements into components. It doesn't have to be 5 days a week. It could be a day a week or 2 days a month or something.
Exactly. And the thing is that, like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be a permanent appointment. So say your social media and marketing manager actually could be a contract that you put someone on for 6 months to get everything humming, where they do an almost like train someone internally who will then roll out that content plan, or then you then shift out of that into then, because you've got all the systems and things set up for your marketing, that you then actually engage a copywriter that just keeps the content fresh that's being pushed out. Like, there's so many different ways to access people this way. Like, we've got a good chunk of the job seekers on our books have actually got their own ABN, so they can contract into your business. we really encourage businesses, especially small businesses, to look at what is the best, to prioritise those hires. I know if people sort of sit down and do that exercise of splitting out your to-do list over your new imaginary C-suite, that it can be a bit overwhelming. But even being able to then do some workforce planning over a sort of 12 to 18 months to 2-year period, where you can then sort of almost break things down into projects and see how you can do them in more bite-sized pieces, and then you're just tapping into those skills that you need as you go.
Yeah, I think what you're highlighting there too is that if a business is looking to explore the opportunities through outsourcing, a clear starting point is to clearly define the roles and expectations of what they're wanting to achieve from that outsourced staff member, and to have clear lines of communication. And in doing so, then you can narrow it down to bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that before anyone goes down this route, if you haven't done it before, is that there needs to be a lot of navel gazing to start with, and that really being honest with yourself about how you manage people, how your business is set up to be able to manage and monitor productivity and output. If you gauge people being at work by eyeballing them with bums on seats between 9 and 5, this will be a really challenging transition for you, because that constant feeling of how do I know if they're working if I can't see them, or how do I know they're not doing a load of washing when they're supposed to be at work. And I think you need to well and truly get into the headspace of, well, let's be honest, they will be doing a load of washing. They will be doing things that, but you need to be able to manage their productivity in a task-based way. So it's not presenteeism anymore. It's the fact that the work is task-based. Even better if it's not customer-facing, if you're then not saying it needs to happen between the hours of 9 till 5, that people might find they get up at Sparrows and get 2 hours work done before kids are up, and then they can go to school assembly if they want to, but then they might log back in between 9 and 11 in the evening. But if you're confident that the work is done with deadlines, with KPIs, or however you want to set it up, then you will have success this way. But like I said, you really, really need to do that internal look at how you as a manager, how you as a boss, how you can let the reins go and trust people, because that's really what it comes down to, is you've got to trust that realistically people want to work.
They do. You just have to let them. You have to let them go, and we've found it out in recent times that there's different ways to do it. Joe, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up. Thank you so much for that discussion. I think that basically we want to encourage business owners to think about things they don't have to do themselves to make their business more sustainable. You've provided a really excellent overview of outsourcing generally. Thank you very much, Joe Palmer from Pointer Remote Roles.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that was our chat with Joe Palmer from Pointer Remote Roles. I think it's a terrific interview from a very successful regional entrepreneur. And the key message for me, David, was it's incumbent on small business owners now to think about what they can let go of, what they can outsource, because it's, there are opportunities coming, and you don't have to do everything yourself.
And I also think there's a wonderful reflection here that there are some amazingly talented people in regional areas, and rather than outsourcing offshore, that we can reflect of the talents that are within those regional communities, support our talented people in those areas, and to assist businesses to fill the gaps in their business.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree totally, David. And I just wanted to make a further point to reinforce from personal experience what to do to get a better return on investment if you do undertake some outsourcing. And in measuring return on investment, I'm talking not only about the dollars that you spend, but also the incredibly valuable personal time you put into getting the whole outsourcing thing working properly. Joe said rightly that it was about outsourcing, was about getting two things right. One, working out what you're really good at and what you're not so good at. Secondly, deciding what is really high priority and what is not. Sounds really simple, right? But I found through several quite unsuccessful attempts at outsourcing that you really need to do a few things. You really need to tightly define in writing and through regular communication exactly what needs to be done, by when and how. Key to that is obviously writing things down, but communicating regularly. Secondly, you can't assume that what you've written down or communicated is fully understood. Again, the secret there is to communicate often and regularly. And also, thirdly, be prepared to invest some time in getting to know who you're working with, like you would with any employee, and share something about the business if you think it's appropriate to help them understand the bigger picture, and maybe share something personally to help try and build that connection. So I guess the next part of it is, what do you actually outsource? It's by itself, it's a pretty broad term. So really quickly, I thought you could think about it in three different ways. One, you get a new employee or contractor to do a very defined role, something that's usually ongoing in the business, could be full-time or part-time. And as Joe said, think of things like major functions of the business, marketing or financial or technology. Secondly, it's project-based. You might get a consultant or a contractor in or some other specialist to do a specific piece of work or a project. And here you're talking about something that might get done in, say, a few weeks or perhaps by a particular end date. And lastly, you might get someone in as a contractor or outsource resource just to do a bunch of regular tasks, things that aren't getting done in the business. And this might be somebody that comes in on a part-time or casual basis. You give them a list of tasks from all parts of the business and get stuff done that you're not getting done. So that's all from today's episode. Tune in at the same time. There'll be further episodes of Small Business Banter on items and matters relevant to small business owners. So that's all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. David and I continue to be inspired by bringing you small business experts and hearing your stories. For any of the links, resources or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact David or I, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com. And David and I would love you to tune in at the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.